I'm beginning to think that Andy Samberg is actually just infallible. But having said that, Palm Springs is actually my first non-Peralta experience. I watched this film partly because I really like Andy Samberg and partly because it sounded amazing. It's a very kind of Groundhog Day film where the same day is repeated again and again. They're stuck in a time loop, but it's a comedy. Now, obviously, Groundhog Day itself is a comedy, but I prefer this kind of loop film when it's done as a horror. I think it's more effective. And based on the trailer for this, it's set at a wedding, and I wasn't really sure how that would work. So it was mainly out of curiosity that I watched it, but I can confirm the execution is amazing. So this was released originally in 2020. It was released on Amazon Prime in the UK this year, this month in fact, and it's directed by Max Barbakow, written by Andy Ciara, starring Andy Samberg, Cristin Milioti, and J.K. Simmons. And I don't want to say too much. I don't really want to spoil it. So I will say, if you want to go in not knowing anything, I thoroughly recommend that. And I'd say stop listening to me rambling on about it, because it is brilliant. I will say that. Give it a go. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you want to know a little bit of what it's about, to see if you think it's your kind of thing, I'll now talk a little bit about it. So to begin with, there's no suggestion of the time loop. It doesn't start with any mention of it. And we follow Nyles, played by Andy Samberg, as they attend the wedding. And while he's there, he meets Siara, played by Cristin Milioti. And they hit it off, they start talking, they decide to just get away from things. And then all of a sudden something happens to Nyles that's quite scary and quite dark. And I have to say, at that point, Milioti's performance is incredible and the most realistic I have ever seen. Something potentially life-threatening happens to Nyles. I won't say what it is. It's quite bizarre. And her reaction is the most real I've ever seen. Because usually when that happens, even in the most spectacular horrors and thrillers, the reactions aren't really that realistic. But hers was. And I just have to say, I loved that. There's also, just before that, a very well choreographed kind of dance sequence that Nyles does as he approaches Siara. Just look out for that near the beginning. It was fabulous. Anyway, once this happens, it's revealed that actually Nyles is already in this time loop. And he has been in this time loop for a very long time. And one thing leads to another, and Siara also becomes part of this time loop. Very contrasting approaches here, because Nyles, having been in this for, I don't think it's ever established how long, but you get the impression that it's months, maybe even years. And he's very kind of chilled about it, and he's just given up trying to get out. Siara, new in this time loop, obviously is a lot more chaotic, is desperately trying to get out. And as her character develops, she's definitely the focal point for the character development, but we also see that in Nyles as well. They both travel through this time loop every day, going through it again and again, discovering more about themselves, about each other, and about, well, comparing life outside to life inside the time loop. And ultimately the question is, will they get out of it? And if they do, how do they do it? Very interesting, very well developed. The character of Roy, J.K. Simmons' character, plays an interesting role in this, who was very unusual. You know, there were a lot of questions in this that were never answered until quite near the end. Constantly kept throwing things up to keep you on your toes, which is essential, because when you're repeating the same day again and again, you need something to keep it fresh. And it really seldom repeats the same scenes. There are a few key moments that kind of play out across the film, but because Nyles and Siara go off into different places and they go to different locations and they start to let their hair down a bit, we get to actually see different scenarios and different things happening when they're away from the wedding. So it actually does keep it fresh, which is brilliant. The execution of the narrative is fantastic. It's got a really great soundtrack. The acting is insane. I mean, normally I'll say for a film, yeah, the acting was really great, but there were so many times when I actually looked at Samberg and Milioti and thought, your acting right now is incredible and deserves awards. I should also point out that this is an award-winning film. It was nominated for 2 Golden Globes for the Best Motion Picture and the Best Performance by an Actor for Andy Samberg. The winner of the Best Motion Picture Comedy for this year, was actually Borat's subsequent movie film, which is just, I don't think it should have won, but it also beat Hamilton. So goodness knows who was on the voting committee at that point. It's got a lot of other, I think it's got about 12 wins. It got the Broadcast Film Critics Best Comedy, several at the Critics' Choice Awards, including Best Actor and Best Actress. Winner of the Best Breakthrough Performance for Milioti for Hollywood Critics Association, has done exceptionally well in terms of accolades. 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb with a Metascore of 83, which is phenomenal. Metascores are so much more hard to achieve than, IMDb ratings, and it's just ticked every single box. It's delivered with everything it promises and so much more. It is funny. It is very funny. The characters are brilliant. There is nothing about this that I would personally have changed. I was worried it would be... I was worried my expectations were too high. Honestly, I want to watch it again straight away. It is phenomenal. And if you only watch one film today or tomorrow, please watch Palm Springs. It is perfect.